Andy Raymond, Unfiltered, joins us as he always does. Wednesdays, normally an hour before this. We had to rejig a couple of things today. Welcome back, pal. How are you?
I'm really well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Paul Kent to talk about the dropping of Todd Smith and Jared Sutton. But let's kick it off there, Andy, to start with, that France don't want to host that Rugby League World Cup in 2025. And we've just been speaking to Greg Peters, the NRL New Zealand Rugby League CEO. It's not a tournament that brings in a lot of cash by all accounts.
No, it's not. It's not. And from a business perspective, they're going to have to be whoever's making the decisions. The international board is going to have to be very calculated in when and how and what criteria they set to make what is a massive decision, 16, 17 months out. From a business perspective, it's not a money spinner. It's not a Cricket World Cup. It's not a Rugby World Cup. So it's not as easy as just saying, we'll have it, or give it to Australia, give it to New Zealand, or give it to Australia and New Zealand. It's just not that easy. First thing that came to mind when I heard that is, do we put it off, and do we put it off just for 12 months, in the respect that there was only going to be 3 years between the two World Cups as it was because of COVID, or is it 2 years? Whatever the delay was, do you put it back another year and just give yourself a bit of breathing space? Do you reset your futures calendar because the last World Cup was postponed? Massive headache, above my pay grade. It will end up, I would assume, in Australia and New Zealand. I think, well, let's be honest, there's no other alternative, is there? I don't think England's going to do it again so soon. So I don't see any other real options, but how they do it probably has to be refined a bit, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And listen to Greg there. He's very realistic in terms of his answers. I mean, he's not trying to featherbed this at all. And what you say, look, it's not a money spinner. I mean, and when it comes down to it, that's the reason that France don't want to host it, because they don't want to be left holding a bill, or French Rugby League doesn't want to be left holding a bill for a couple of million and going, well, how the hell do we get this? Because the international game, and this is the queer thing about it, Andy, is that there's plenty of money as far as the NRL goes. There's plenty of money as far as English Club Rugby League goes. Not so much here in New Zealand in terms of the club scene. But in terms of the international game, it is still lacking. I mean, this is a sport that keeps telling us that it's going to take games to Las Vegas. That, I was reading articles yesterday, Wayne Bennett saying, we are going to crack that United States market. I mean, you can't even get a World Cup organised, for God's sake, or without somebody going, oh my God, it's going to end up with some financial failing in an overdraft of a couple of million. I mean, it just seems so unrealistic to me.
Yeah, I think it is also very unrealistic. One thing I will point out too is when bids go up and when the process goes out for tender initially, you as a governing body can play your governments off one another. The NRL can go to the Australian government and say, hey, we should be a part of this. Can you kick the can? How much do you want to throw in? Well, that's gone. There shouldn't be any government funding available now because there's no competition where to host it. So that makes it potentially an even more difficult spot for the Southern Hemisphere. You're not going to have, national governments kicking the can and throwing some dollars to try and pry the event away from somewhere else, because there is nowhere else.
No. And also, look, with that, it's not the kind of earner that all of a sudden, if you're hosting the Rugby World Cup, or we're, co-hosting between us the Football Women's World Cup coming up in a couple of months. I mean, FIFA provide all kinds of incentives for that. Plus, of course, you've got a global audience, and obviously, it can generate its own cash. The reality is, for International Rugby League, apart from those of us who like it, it's not an international game. And that's, to me, it's a bit like women's rugby, in that for those of us who like it, it's great, but it's actually not a true international game. And so you can sit there and try and pretend it is as much as you want, but the reality of it is, how much money can it bring in? What kind of sponsors are interested? And those are only going to be interested if you've got a global television audience that totals in the hundreds of millions. If you can't provide that, well, then you're back at square one.
yeah, you are back at square one, and it doesn't go global. And let's not kid ourselves. You know, they're talking about Las Vegas at the moment. I think it has merit. I really do, and I think at some stage it's worth a big go. I would love to see that money, though, directed elsewhere, directed to junior rugby league, directed to country rugby league, and that's not just in Australia. That's in New Zealand as well. I'd like to see the next generation and the generation beyond that incentivised, encouraged to fall in love with the game like we did as young blokes. Not just getting out to the schools for a free trip, but I'm talking spending money on local clubs so parents don't have to come up with $180 for a pair of boots, $75 for a football, and then the jersey, and then the shorts, and then there are financial incentives that could be, given to these rugby league strongholds to get kids from disadvantaged areas into playing footy. Because once you've got the kid hooked at 7 or 8 years of age, they're a rugby league fan for life, just like we are, mate.
Andy Raymond Unfiltered is with us. Let's turn our attention to Paul Kent, and he just appeared in our news bulletin here at the top of the hour, mate, saying that he looks forward to, the truth coming out, going to court and everything else. I mean, the way that these things are reported these days, it's always he's the villain, he's an a-hole, he's domestically assaulted his partner or whatever it is. We don't know what the actual facts of this are. We don't know whether or not this is a heated argument that became way over the top. Somebody called the police and they go through their perfunctory duty, of course. What does it mean for Paul Kent? Has he been suspended from his duties, or has he just been taken off? He's not on an NRL 360. Apparently, he's not going to write for the Daily Telegraph till this is all over.
Mate, from what I know, and this is just very simply looking from the outside and listening from the outside, he's been, I don't know if suspended is the right word, relieved of his duties from News Limited publications and from Fox Sports until there is an end to this saga. He's come out today, Paul, they've been to court. He has pleaded not guilty. That's very important. He has pleaded not guilty. However, the reports over here are suggesting that he is going to be hit with a further charge, so that will be 3 charges he will face. He has come out and said he has the full support of his employees, or employers, should I say. That was a question and answer with a media pack outside of court, but on charges like this, to be saying I have the full support of my bosses, big statement, really big statement.
Yeah.
Whether he is extremely comfortable with his position and in what he believes is the truth, or whether, that's just something he said. But that, to me, points towards perhaps there's a little bit more to this. And look, there's unfortunately so many people day to day go through situations like this, and the guy is always proven, or not always proven, the guy is always deemed to be the bad guy when the story initially breaks. I feel sorry for all parties that are dragged into circuses like this, because no one benefits. What is even worse, though, is if a bloke does, manhandle or in any way get physical with a female. It's just not on. But to coin a cliche, I'm not one to throw stones. Without all the facts, I like to be a little more calculated than that. And I believe, maybe wrongly, but I believe everyone is entitled to their day in court. We will, at some stage, hear all the facts. I believe that is in December of this year. We will hear all the facts. Then I'll make my judgment. But it doesn't matter who it is. It could be the next door neighbour, the local plumber, an actor, Paul Kent, a rugby league player, you, me. I am happy to sit back and wait until I know what the full story is.
Andy Raymond Unfiltered, one more to go then, and that is Todd Smith and Jared Sutton. Sutton's reffed 7 grand finals, both of these men taken off duties for this weekend. Has this got anything at all to do with Jason Paris's comments from a week ago? And we never... No, it hasn't. So even though Todd Smith has had a couple of clangers in a row, it's got nothing to do with that.
I don't believe so, mate. The NRL and the referees are on a rotation system as well. Everyone, the leading referees, will get a week off at a certain time. These two have got the week off this weekend following bad games. So, yeah, it makes sense. It also delivers a really clear message to the referees that at any stage, you too, like the players, like the coaches, have to be at the top of your game or there are consequences. And that's only fair. They're professionals. They're getting paid and they're getting paid well. And if their performance isn't up to scratch, don't expect to be there next weekend. Exactly the same as a halfback or a fullback.
What's on the podcast this week, my man?
Mate, we've got a terrific interview with Pat Richards, who reflects very fondly in a different way about the 2005 West Tigers grand final, winning that fabulous Benji Marshall flick pass. And he actually says, I remind Benji all the time that it was a shit pass, and I made it look good.
Well, he put in a huge fend. Don't forget, I mean, that's the thing, that all the attention was on the pass. He put in a massive big fend to get to that try line.
Yeah, it made terrific. And it's a really good yarn because you have a lot of success overseas as well, did Paddy Richards. Challenge Cup, UK Super League Grand Final. We've also got the Wiz Gary Freeman on, Larry Corowa, Laurie Daly, Jamie Soward, Dominic Young, and Greymouth's finest, the great Griffin Neame. So it's another big week, mate, on the podcast.
I look forward to talking next week. Andy Raymond Unfiltered, that's ARU, Andy Raymond Unfiltered, name the man's podcast.
Devlin. You better believe it! The platform.